first week of the SEC schedule is out. The remainder of it will come away at 6 o'clock tonight. Joining us now from the SEC Network is Cole Cubelic. Cole, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, fellas. Hope you're doing well.
We are. How do you see the first week? What stood out to you about the first week of the SEC season?
I tell you, man, I look at Auburn, Kentucky as the game of week one. And I kind of thought when I originally saw the schedules for this season released, and I saw Kentucky-Auburn on October the 3rd. Now, Auburn still had that North Carolina game at that time and obviously a game at Ole Miss, but I thought that was the one that kind of decided the season. Kind of viewed it like I did Auburn-Mississippi State for so many years, that early conference game that usually the winner went on to exceed expectations and the loser kind of held on for bowl eligibility. Like you think 2013, Nick Marshall needed to hit C.J. Uzoma on a wheel route with about a minute left in that game to get a win. Everybody thinks of Ricardo Lewis and Chris Davis kicked six, but that game against Mississippi State was huge. 2010, Cam Newton couldn't get anything going on offense over in Starkville. Auburn grinds one out. They go on to win a national championship game. So I think that's a pivotal matchup. I think there are some other intriguing games for different reasons, but that's the one because I think Kentucky is as physically capable at the line of scrimmage as any team in this league. And I mean that. Based on what they have up front on defense returning, what they have up front on offense returning, while we are embarking on most likely the least physical college football season we've ever seen, that's a big advantage for the Wildcats.
I think you're exactly right, Cole, and we were talking about it last week. Who's going to benefit from not having to practice? Well, we know who's not going to benefit from it, right? The receivers and the quarterbacks, they'll be okay. They can throw on air. They can have 7-on-7. They're going to be fine. So they'll benefit. They're going to be okay. The offense and defensive line, not having that contact, that's not something you can simulate. You can't go out there in shells. You can't go out there in just helmets and actually work on your crafts as an offense and defensive lineman. So they're going to be playing catch-up from the get-go. So earlier in the season, you're exactly right. The more veteran offense and defensive lines, I think they're going to thrive.
And you look, too, it's like let's take the Ole Miss Florida game for one. Florida's offensive line's got, all five starters back, but they weren't a dominant group last year. So does that give them an advantage that they have guys that have played or a disadvantage that they didn't play great ball last year? And you see that Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes, Jacob Copeland, Zachary Carter didn't practice today. That would greatly change my opinion of that Florida football team if those four guys weren't going. You look at LSU and Mississippi State. LSU's a more talented football team, but obviously things are going to be very different for them. Mississippi State's not going to rely on the offensive line as much, but that rhythm, that feel, that continuity, that chemistry is all going to be important with how they handle themselves. So, I look at that Tennessee offensive line, I look at the Kentucky offensive line, the Bama offensive line, and I think those are just going to be massive advantages for those teams heading into the games that they're playing in week one.
Cole, there is a school of thought that possibly when we see this schedule released at 6 o'clock that there will be some of the more important games, the rivalry games, pushed up in the schedule, just in case this has to be an even more abbreviated season. You buying into that?
I don't think that rivalry games are going to move too much. Now, the schedule just can't be what it's always been just because of how different it is and inherently who has to play who. But I think, this is just my opinion, I think the majority of the rivalry games probably stay where they were. If we were going to get weird, we would have seen, some rivalry games week one. So many people thought, we're going to get Iron Bowl week one and LSU Florida week one. Bama Georgia was the first SEC game on their schedule. They're going to keep that week one. Well, obviously now we've seen that this thing's going to be totally different. So I think trying to piece together how everything adds up compared to what it was. I think that you're going to probably get Georgia, Florida in a similar spot. I think you're going to get LSU, A&M, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. I think you're going to get those games late in the season. I don't know if it's going to be the last game or Thanksgiving weekend because keep in mind we're used to those games around Thanksgiving, but that's not the last weekend of the season now. So how do they manage that portion of the schedule? But I think most of them will be pretty close to where we're used to getting them.
Cole, you've done enough radio with me that I always talk about 3 and 4 game stretches within your schedule that are going to be the bear of your schedule, the most difficult part. And I think you can't run from that this year. You're playing an all-conference schedule. You're playing 10 SEC games. And so I am so intrigued with the first part of this season with who gets that 3-game stretch from the beginning, because with all the uncertainty we've had in the offseason, with how training camps, and I don't even really want to call it training camps because that's not what they're going to be. If you're that team that has their difficult run at the beginning of the season, I think you're at a gigantic disadvantage.
Oh, there's no doubt. It's one of the reasons, Jacob, that I've said when we got the 2 different cross-divisional opponents that were going to be added. I said before those came out, it didn't matter who they were. The team that my opinion was going to change on the most was Texas A&M, because Texas A&M had one of those schedules that they seemingly were going to be able to grow throughout the course of the season. And there was kind of a trip-up game against Auburn on October the 17th, but I think you had to really sort of sit back and take a look at it and say, man, A&M has a chance not only just to be 10-0 when they go to Tuscaloosa, but 10-0 when they go to Tuscaloosa and then get LSU to finish the season. Because, Abilene Christian, North Texas, Colorado, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, Fresno State. Then you had the Auburn game, but then you had South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Vandy. So even if, let's say, they tripped up against Auburn, they had so many opportunities to just build momentum throughout the course of the year and then get their 2 biggest games to close the season out. Well, it's not going to be that anymore, mainly because it's just all conference games and they play in the West. So I think that's the team that my opinion has changed on the most. And, we'll see chronologically how it works out. Obviously, getting Vanderbilt week 1, big for them. I think A&M will be about a 14, 17-point favorite in that game. But I don't have near the confidence that I did of Texas A&M being a real player in the West, like I did, let's just say, 3-4 months ago.
Cole Cubelic is our guest. Cole, late last week there was a report that one of the conference calls in the SEC had some pretty upset members about how the 2 opponents were added. Any lingering effects of that, and will anything come of it?
I don't think so. I think the first thing that I thought when I heard that was, do the members of the media who are making a big deal out of this have any idea? Like, I'm trying to think what terminology, the vocabulary that was used, like became heated, or I'm trying to think what the quote was that was used.
Contentious, I think was the word. Maybe.
Contentious. That's great. I love it. College football goes a contentious call. You think they have any idea what contentious really is for a college football coach? Like, these are guys who are MFing a tailback for not going the right way in blitz pickup, and then literally 5 seconds later it's completely over. Like, it's completely done. It's like it never happened. And then 3 plays later, they're grabbing the face mask of a left guard, who went the wrong way on outside zone, and then 10 seconds later, completely over. So were there guys who probably were thinking, hey, man, why did this happen? Or how did this happen? What did they want answers? Yeah, probably. Are they threatening to not play their schedule? No. And I think that's sort of what some people wanted to try to drive the point home. What did you expect it to be? Do you think every SEC coach is just going to be like, yeah, cool, man, sounds good, looks good? It's going to be 10 SEC games. Like, none of them are going to be just playing happy with everything. And especially if you're Missouri or Arkansas, and this is your first go-around as a head coach, you're trying to improve things and you're trying to make a good impression, and all of a sudden you get what you got on yours. I'm sure they were pretty upset. But I think contentious as far as what most normal people think of what it would take for you to believe that somebody was that, and then what that is for a college football coach, obviously it's 2 different things.
Cole, we were talking earlier about South Carolina. Obviously, they open up with Tennessee, but we were talking about, in normal situations, in a normal season, I think Muschamp would have some heat on him. I don't think there'd be any question about that. He might have the hottest hot seat in college football. But with the way that everything's set up this year, with schools losing money, do you think anybody's truly going to be on the hot seat this year?
I do not. No, I just really don't. Jacob, first off, I don't know where the money's going to come from, and I know most times it comes from boosters. But I mean, you're going to have to be a mega booster with FU money to just be able to say, oh, I'm going to write the whole check to go ahead and get rid of these guys, not including you're probably going to have some buyouts with assistants and different things of that nature. So I just think this is a year that you probably take off unless there is something that someone could get away with cause. So something that happens off the field or legally, something from that perspective. I don't think you're going to see a coach go winless or win 1 or 2 games, and teams are going to have a quick trigger and just get them out. Because that's just I don't know fiscally if they're going to be able to not only justify it but realistically make it happen.
Cole Cubelic, thanks so much for your time. We'll look forward to the rest of the schedule coming out here in a little over 3 hours, and we'll talk with you soon.
Hey, enjoyed it, guys. Appreciate you having me.